I wasn't supposed to see the photos. That's the thing about secrets now, someone always forgets to crop you out of the group chat. My cousin posted 17 pictures before she realized I was still in the thread. Balloons, a custom 3-tier cake with my sister's name spelled in gold fondant, my parents beaming like they'd just won an award for best family on earth. 50 people crammed into our backyard. A DJ, a photo booth, a champagne toast, all for my sister. And I wasn't there. I wasn't even invited. I scrolled through each image with the volume off, sitting on my apartment floor at 11 at night, still in my work clothes. I zoomed in on my mother's face, searching for even a flicker of guilt. Nothing. Just pure joy. My father had his arm around my sister, mid-laugh, the way he never looked at me. The caption read, "Surprising our favorite girl. She had no idea." I was the one who had no idea. I was the one erased. You have to understand something. This wasn't a mistake. My parents didn't forget me. I lived 22 minutes away. I spoke to my mother 3 days before the party. She asked me about my job, told me my sister was stressed with finals, and said, "We're just keeping things quiet around here." She looked me in the eye, through the phone, and deliberately hid an entire event. A massive surprise party for my little sister's 21st birthday. And I was the only sibling. Think about that. They didn't send a last-minute text. They didn't pretend there was a mix-up. They simply acted like I didn't exist. And the worst part? I still sent a present. I know how pathetic that sounds, but I was desperate to prove I was still part of this family. I spent $200 on a gold necklace she'd pinned on her dream gifts board. I wrapped it myself, chose a card with watercolor flowers, and wrote the kindest message I could pull from the hollow place inside me. To the sister who lights up every room, you deserve the world. With all my love, forever and always. I signed it with my name, pressed my lips to the envelope, and mailed it the next morning. No one called to say thank you. Instead, my sister posted an Instagram story unboxing the necklace, tagging my mother, crying happy tears. She didn't tag me. She captioned it, "Mom and Dad just get me so well." She let them take credit for my gift. And I let it happen. For 3 weeks, I spiraled. Every childhood memory resurfaced like floodwater. I remembered being 12 and overhearing my parents discuss a father-daughter dance for my sister's school. There was no event for me. I was told to be mature and understand that my sister needed more support. I remembered my 17th birthday, when I got a grocery store cake and a card signed with my dad's rushed handwriting, while my sister got a rented limo and a designer bag for her 16th. The pattern was so obvious I felt stupid for ever pretending it wasn't there. I was the afterthought, the placeholder, the one they loved just enough to keep out of the frame, never in it. But this party was the confirmation. They didn't just favor her, they were actively building a life that didn't include me. I was being erased while still alive, and the silence was the point. And then my grandmother called. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I almost didn't pick up. My grandmother and I were never particularly close. She was my mother's mother, and she had always been reserved, watchful. She spoke in careful sentences, never emotional, never warm. But when I saw her number, something in my gut pulled tight. I answered, and her voice was strange. Not frail. Sharp. Like a blade wrapped in cloth. "Come visit me," she said. "By yourself. And don't tell your mother." I asked why. She repeated the words slower. "By yourself. Don't tell anyone. Tomorrow morning." That was it. She hung up. I sat holding the phone, my heart slamming against my ribs. I had no idea what was coming, but the urgency in her tone told me this wasn't a random invitation. This was an intervention. The kind that changes the shape of your entire life. I didn't sleep that night. I rehearsed every possible scenario in my head, but my imagination was useless. I kept coming back to the party, to the photos, to the necklace. This was connected. It had to be. I drove to her house the next morning, a small brick bungalow she'd lived in for 40 years. The curtains were drawn. The street was too quiet. I parked and walked up the path, my sandals loud on the concrete, and before I could knock, she opened the door. She looked at me differently this time, like she was seeing me for the first time. or like she was about to witness something she'd been dreading. She took my wrist, not my hand, and pulled me inside. I barely stepped into the hallway when I heard the lock click. The deadbolt. Then the chain. She sealed us in. My breath caught. There was no danger here, physically, but the sound of that lock echoed like a warning. My grandmother walked past me into the living room without a word, and I followed because what else could I do? The room smelled like old paper and tea. She sat down in a high-backed chair and motioned for me to sit across from her. I lowered myself onto the edge of the sofa. My hands were shaking. What she said next made my heart stop. Your parents are not who you think they are. She paused, letting the sentence hang like a verdict. And that party wasn't just a celebration. It was a cover. A celebration of something they're about to do that will destroy you, and I have the proof. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a thick manila envelope, worn at the edges, marked with dates that went back 15 years. Your grandfather left you everything, she said. A trust fund, the property, the investments, every asset that side of the family ever built. It was supposed to be yours when you turned 25. That's next year. She tapped the envelope. But your parents have been quietly filing documents to transfer it all to your sister. They've been forging signatures, manufacturing reasons, painting you as mentally unstable, estranged, abandoned. They needed to justify cutting you out completely, so they staged the party as the final family announcement. In 2 weeks, they're meeting with a judge to finalize the petition. And you would have never known. The room spun. The photos. The deliberate exclusion. The gift I sent like a fool, while they were already writing me out of existence. My grandmother's eyes didn't waver. I've been gathering evidence for months. Every false statement. Every forged document. Every email where your mother tells the lawyer you're unreachable and hostile. It's all here. She slid the envelope across the table toward me. I didn't know if I should tell you. But then I saw those party pictures online. And I realized they weren't just celebrating her. They were burying you. I stared at the envelope, my blood turning to ice. This wasn't a family. This was a conspiracy. And everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. The envelope sat between us like a bomb. I reached for it, my fingers numb, and pulled out the first document. A sworn statement from my mother, dated 8 months ago, claiming I had severe behavioral issues and refused all contact with the family. Next was an email chain with their attorney, where my father wrote, "We just need to make her look unreachable. The judge won't dig deep if the paperwork is consistent." My stomach turned inside out. Page after page of carefully crafted lies. Forged signatures that were supposed to be mine. A fake psychological evaluation. A fabricated timeline of my estrangement. But what I saw next was the detail that broke something in me permanently. There was a final petition summary, and at the bottom, a note in the lawyer's handwriting. Client intends to transfer full estate to younger daughter. Celebration event scheduled to mark the successful resolution. Celebration event. The party. The party wasn't about my sister's birthday at all. The cake, the balloons, the 50 guests, it was a victory lap. They were toasting the day they finally erased me legally and financially. And I had sent them a gift to congratulate them. My grandmother didn't move. She let me sit in the silence, drowning in what I'd just learned. Then she said, I didn't raise my daughter to be a thief. But she became one anyway. And I won't let her destroy my husband's last wish. She explained that my grandfather, before he died, had seen what was happening, the favoritism, the cruelty. He changed his will in secret, bypassing my mother and locking the inheritance directly to me, to be released when I turned 25. But my parents had been plotting for years to undo it. They just needed me to look crazy and gone long enough for a judge to sign off. And I would have never known. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me shut off like a light. I looked up at my grandmother and asked one question. What can we do? She smiled, not a warm smile, but the smile of a woman who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Everything, she said. That night, I called my mother. I kept my voice steady. I asked if we could have dinner soon. She hesitated and said, maybe next month, sweetheart. Things are just so busy right now. The same line she always used. I pushed a little. Is everything okay? You sounded so happy at the party. There was a pause. A micro-silence I used to mistake for disinterest. Now I heard it for what it was, a calculation. Oh yes, it was lovely. Wish you could have been there. Just a last-minute thing, you know. Lie after lie, so smooth I almost admired the performance. I said goodbye, hung up, and opened my laptop. The next 2 weeks were a blur of precision. My grandmother, who I'd always seen as a quiet old woman, turned out to be a retired court stenographer with deep connections in the family law system. She knew which judge was assigned to the hearing. She knew the clerk who processed the fraudulent documents. And she knew exactly how to file an emergency motion to intervene. We hired a forensic document examiner who confirmed the signatures were forged. We collected every contradictory statement my parents had made to other relatives about why I was absent. My grandmother recorded a phone call with my mother, during which my mother casually mentioned, "We just need this thing signed next week, and it's all done." She thought she was talking about a car registration. She was actually confessing to fraud. The morning of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse in a navy dress my grandmother bought me. She held my arm and said, "Walk in there like you already own everything because you do." I walked into that room, and the look on my parents' faces was something I will replay for the rest of my life. My mother went pale. My father actually stepped backward. My sister, who had been smiling, froze with her mouth open. They had no idea I knew. They thought this was a routine rubber stamp proceeding. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, looked up from the file and said, "We have a new motion to address. Miss, please step forward." I didn't speak at first. My lawyer, a woman my grandmother had personally selected, handed the judge the folder we had assembled. The evidence. The forged documents. The emails. The recorded call. The judge read for 10 minutes in absolute silence. When she finally looked up, her voice was ice. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan, you're aware that presenting falsified evidence in my courtroom is a felony, correct?" My mother started stammering. "This is a misunderstanding. She's been unstable." The judge cut her off. "I have a forensic handwriting analysis here. I have recorded admissions of intent. And I have your own mother sitting in the back row, prepared to testify against you." My parents turned around. My grandmother raised one hand in a small wave, and the room seemed to tilt. What happened after that was a cascade I couldn't stop, even if I wanted to. The judge didn't just deny their petition. She referred the case to the district attorney for criminal investigation, fraud, perjury, elder financial abuse, because they had exploited my grandfather's estate while my grandmother was still alive. The court froze all the contested assets immediately. My parents were escorted out of the building by a bailiff, not arrested on the spot, but clearly warned they were under active review. The news spread faster than I ever imagined. My cousin, who had posted the party photos, was the first to call, hysterical. "They told us you had abandoned the family. They said you were dangerous." I let her cry. I didn't comfort her. Within a week, my father was placed on administrative leave from his firm pending the investigation. My mother's social circle, the same women who had attended that party, began to distance themselves. The photos from that night became evidence, not memories. My sister, the golden child, lost the car they had bought her with estate funds that weren't legally theirs. She sent me a text message, not an apology, but a demand. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't reply. I never will. The legal consequences were brutal. My parents faced indictment 8 weeks later. The plea deal required full restitution, a criminal record, and the permanent loss of any claim to my grandfather's estate. My grandmother took back control of the property and moved it into an ironclad trust one now manage. My parents were forced to sell their home to cover legal fees. My sister had to drop out of her private university and move in with a distant aunt in another state because no one local would take her in after the truth came out. The people who had celebrated my erasure were now the ones being scrubbed from every guest list, every family gathering, every Christmas card. They lost their jobs, their reputations, their standing. My mother wrote me a letter begging for forgiveness. I read it once and set it on fire over the kitchen sink. The revenge wasn't something I fueled with anger. It was simply the truth, finally allowed to speak. I stood in that courtroom and let the facts destroy them. And when it was over, I walked out with my grandmother, drove to her house, and ate peach cobbler while she told me stories about my grandfather I had never been allowed to hear. The family I thought I had was a lie. But the family I found in that betrayal? It was real. It was small. And it was mine. They didn't just lose me, they lost everything.